All right. Got it. It says we're live, but the web browser looks like it's still doing its thing. Oh, and I want to mute that. So these are the things I've got to learn as well when I'm doing these things, that you can't have any other interference coming out on your computer. Otherwise, it's going to have lots of feedback.
Right.
Hi, Karen.
Hey, Ian.
We're live on the internet. Welcome to Coaching, Coffee, and Conversations. And Karen and I have been talking about doing something like this, and Mark, hopefully when he joins us, about publishing some of the conversations that we have with one another, because we often have these kind of nuggets of brilliance that we want to share, and they don't seem to have a place to live. So it's nice to maybe put some of these things out there so that people can actually get a benefit from some of these, coffee conversations that have great tools and ideas and thoughts in them. And we finally decided to make this official and put it out there. So welcome. Grab your coffee and listen in on our conversation. And feel free to comment or ask questions or whatnot, and I'll be happy to answer them, and Karen as well on our off time.
And if you notice, Ian's got a tea and I have warm water. So it's the metaphor of just slowing down and just taking time to listen in and think for yourself, which we don't do as much as, and I know that myself, even with being home a lot, I wouldn't say that I've spent time just really pondering and thinking. So having Ian and Mark in my life has been almost a bit of a forced experience for me to just take something interesting and see where it takes us.
Yeah, and I think that's what this is all about, is just putting ourselves out there, some of our ideas, and seeing how it lands. And it'll attract the people who want to hear more of this stuff and want to dive a little bit deeper. And gives people an insight as to kind of the ways that we think and what we're going through and how we deal with things.
And too, Ian, I think the other thing I would add is some of you have participated with us in the training sessions in the learning environment. And we all know that it has a structure and it's contained. And so there's only so much that we can bring to a specific tool or a specific concept. So this will allow you to see kind of how it unfolds in the messiness of exploring a topic or exploring a tool, and what shows up when you're just kind of free flowing from it, versus seeing, okay, I've got to make sure we have a beginning and a middle and an end. So this will be, I would say, a messy conversation that usually takes us into really, really cool places.
Yeah, and like you said, when we're doing those things in a controlled environment, it has to fit within a time frame. It has to look and feel a certain way, and you sometimes don't have the chance to let things breathe the way that they necessarily need to fully go through the conversation. So we brought a topic for today as well. We brought the conversation dance as our metaphor that we would speak into a little bit today. So I'm going to share my screen quickly that shows our conversation dance. So this is the metaphor that we use in a lot of our work, because when we're dancing in the moment with our partners, we have an opportunity to choose from different tools in our toolbox. We have different expertise that we bring to the table. We could give advice, we can problem solve, we can teach, we can give direction, we can share knowledge, and sometimes we can coach. And when we're doing the work that we're doing, we often we are coaching, but we're trying to meet our dance partner in the moment with where they are. And oftentimes there's an opportunity to have a bit of a coaching conversation or ask some coaching questions that support this person where they're at. And yeah, so we thought we'd share the conversation dance with people to kind of dive into what is it and how do we use it, and I guess what else can we impart to other people who are dancing with their conversational buddies.
That metaphor came up, Ian, because you and I and Mark, when we did the coaching capacity training, the number one question that came out once people started to get some exposure to coaching conversations, be practicing in it, the first question that comes, when do you know when to coach? And so we said, well, when do you know when to give direction? When do you know when to teach somebody? And so it's the question is, how do you know? And you said something really important, because I felt like for years for me, before I was introduced to coaching, I was the lead in the dance. I was really good at it. I could fire off stuff. And for any of you that know me, I have no lack of capability of using words, giving my kind of picture of what I see. So the big unlearning for me when I started getting introduced to coaching was, wait a minute, why did I feel that I'm the lead in every dance? And I started to realize that I was not always doing a good job of that. I was constantly stepping on people's toes. So I think that's the big thing is, and I really like to ask you, Ian, because you've really taught me a lot about pause and just trusting a little more than what's inside here. And how do you know what are the right pair of shoes in the moment to serve that other person, to really create the conversation and the support and just be with that person to be able to influence, the dance in a way that supports both yourself and the other person.
I think often people will give you clues in what they're saying. It's a matter of giving them enough time and space for them to get some stuff out, because there'll be a lot of habitual statements in the way people talk that they don't know, or I don't know is big, right? So if we kind of let them off the hook by trying to give them an answer because they don't know so quickly, we don't give them a chance to, kind of get a little bit messy and try to start figuring some other things out and not use their default answer. And then if you get them to talk enough, they're going to start giving you clues as to where they're at more specifically, whether they're truly lost and they need some sort of professional support, or if they maybe are lacking some information or knowledge, they're going to give you hints. And if they're open to some coaching conversations, you can always ask them, this sounds like maybe you've got the answers inside already. Are you open to having maybe a deeper conversation on, what you've got at your disposal? And then let them decide where it takes you. This way you're truly following them, as opposed to, I think I know where they want to go because I'm smart and I'll take them there, right? But we rarely really know where they should or ought to be, because it's their life, it's their journey. And you said something to me earlier today, saying something about giving advice. And I had it for a second there, and now I've lost it. But something about you knowing better than them. Do you remember what you said?
I don't actually remember that. I think what I said.
That they won't follow through. They won't follow through on your great idea.
That's right. Well, the thing I've learned, and that was the hard thing, right? I discovered this in my later time in my life, in my mid-40s, is that what I so dearly held was that when I give people my ideas, my experiences, my tools, and really think I'm supporting them, and they love that part of me. But what's the probability of them being able to implement them if they don't have my experience, they don't have the grounded perspectives that I have, or the belief systems I have, or the tools that I have? The probability, even though it looks really good on paper, it really drops down significantly. So this bringing coaching in allowed me to ask more questions, because we all have the Karen Bonner's experiences, tools, life stories, support systems around us. So you are truly, when you're let go of needing to give them the answer, the words let go, and allow them to find their own way forward, that they have a lot, 99% of the time, they've got everything they need around them. They've just forgotten, or they haven't seen them. They haven't had the time to have someone ask them enough questions. Oh yeah, I've got that. Oh, I forgot I had that. oh my gosh, Sally, yes, Sally, I could talk to her about it. So you're reconnecting them to all of what they already know and who they know. So when they walk out the door or hang up the phone or now get off of a Zoom call, they have a way forward that's not only familiar, but it's thought out and it's well mapped for themselves versus me giving them the map. I don't know if that makes any sense, Ian, what I just said.
No, it makes total sense. And we often don't give people, because we're in that action society, act and react, and we're constantly doing, we don't take that time and space to ourselves to be able to examine and explore. And even when we do that, it's still our own set of questions that are spinning in our own mind. So giving somebody the gift of time and space to process some of these things, it doesn't necessarily take that long, to be honest, but it's more time than we would normally give ourselves and from an alternate perspective.
You know, my saying that your thoughts are like a bad neighborhood, don't go there alone. Because we haven't got this listening space and this curiosity space as well healed around us in society, what this opens up is this opportunity for people to get, like you said, something really early on, like the space for them to just get stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think these days we got a lot in there. It's people are talking about this foggy, busy mind they have. So just being able to clear out that alone, and that's where we know all of a sudden that, and that dissipates, the nugget of what they really need to pay attention to can be seen so clearly for them. They go, oh, there's what it really needs to be.
You just gave me a new metaphor. It's completely unrelated, but it's like if you go on vacation and you have a suitcase full of clothes, and after a couple of like the first day or two, things are neat. Like as long as you didn't take it out, right? Yeah. But then when you're a few days in, things have gotten a little out of sorts, out of place. You don't even know what's there anymore after 3 or 4 days. And you're like searching, and you honestly have to empty the whole suitcase out before you can pick up, oh, there's my clean underwear or socks or whatever, and be able to deal with it properly. So it's just that kind of unpacking so that you can pick up the piece that you need and then move on from there.
I love that. When I was looking at the conversation dance, I thought if we could reshape that, because kind of thinking about you just said something about messiness. That's what I picked up. We talk all the time about how conversations are messy, and that's the mixed up suitcase. That's what it gets like, when there's a lot going on around us. So having to take everything out, and I always wondered if we could repicture that conversation dance, Ian, where in every shoe, there's something, maybe a heel, that there's a bit of coaching in everything, because how are you going to know what is the knowledge you need to give somebody? How are you going to know what direction do they need? How are you going to know what nugget of teaching or instruction you need to give them, unless you ask some questions and really get some clarity? Because we often come, even when we come to conversations, looking for advice and direction. I know myself that I don't always know what I need. You'll often say to me, Karen, just keep talking. You'll figure it out. We will figure it out. Just keep talking. So I just felt like if you could put some shoes on there, I'd almost see coaching on the heels of all of those wonderful skills and tools that we can have available on our toolkit.
We have had a lot of conversations where I just let you roll. So maybe even calling it a conversation might be a little strong because it's a little one-sided, but sometimes it's just having the space and having 1 or 2 questions that are able to, like, on the heels of what's going on, to open some of those doors. Hey, Mark.
Hey.
Well, welcome to Coaching, Coffee, and Conversations. You're on the line.
I know technology is great when it works.
Yeah. So Mark's our third wheel in these coaching conversations, and not in the just in the metaphorical sense.
I love being a third wheel. The stakes are much lower.
Being the third wheel, so you're the one who gets kicked out first.
Yeah, the stakes are much lower. Like the bar is so low when you're the third wheel.
So Mark, Karen, and I do a lot of work together, especially in this particular sandbox. So we've kind of just kind of covered over or covered off what this channel sort of is about, and the conversation dance as its kind of first metaphor that we are talking into. Is there anything that you'd like to bring up about the conversation dance, Mark?
I love the conversation dance. It's truly, for me, any tool that shows up with a flexibility is a sign of a strong tool. And when we talk about the conversation and that flexibility of being able to sway and flow from one aspect to the other, that truly respects that flexibility and that variability that we find in conversations. So instead of saying you always do it this way, which is not in reality true, when you look at the conversation dance model, it really is genuine, and it helps to support that flexibility that all of that's involved in conversations and all the tools that we bring on our tool belt. So that's what I like the most about it.
So it's not just a hammer.
It's not just a hammer. It's like a hammer with an attach. It's like a multi-tool hammer with a set of with a plier that folds out from the handle. I don't know. I could keep going on that metaphor. You know, we love metaphors, but it's just amazing as far as a concept. So I know we like to use it a lot, and it comes up in so many applications.
Because I thought coaching was the hammer that we had to smack over everybody all the time.
Well, I remember when I first was introduced to coaching, and like everybody else, I just loved it. And I thought, this is amazing. Where has this been all my life? And walking out of those training sessions and then starting to use it, I was like a child with a hammer. Everything looked like a nail. I like to say I was going out and playing, let's see if I can coach this. And that's why the conversation dance sets that wisdom to when do we use it and in what measure and where is it more applicable and going in and out from it. So yeah, for me, that's what it speaks to.
Yeah, just before you came on, Karen was asking me, how do you know, what pair of shoes to put on? And I'm just saying, you need to give people space. You need to give people space for them to kind of basically tell you what it is that they're looking for.
Well, just like the conversation dance, if we bring the dance to the dance metaphor to another level, I mean, we've all talked about this quite a bit. And in traditional dancing, there's somebody who leads and somebody who follows. So the answer to that is the person being coached in the coaching conversation is the one we follow. So when we're in that conversation and I'm talking to you, Ian, and you're coming up, hey, Mark, I'd like to talk to you about something. Guess what? You're leading. I think you say it best when, and I got it from you, watching you in these conversations, when you stopped dead in the middle of the conversation, looked at the person, tilted your head and said, what do you need from me right now? And that is truly powerful in the conversation dance, because you're telling your dance partner, what music are we putting on and where are we going with this? And I've seen you do it like brilliantly. And that's a great way to bring that dance into how do you know which shoes to put on? Ask your partner.
And so, sometimes, Mark, honestly, that is not because I'm brilliant in the moment. It might just be you've spit out a lot of stuff over the past 10 minutes. Where are you at now? What do you want to grab onto and move with now? So it's a recalibration, not only for me, but it's really for them to tell me what have they uncovered that they want to work towards, because there's just maybe too many threads that I could pull on. So instead of me trying to figure out and grab a bunch and be wrong, have them tell me what it is that they want to work on.
Yeah. It's like, okay, we did a mambo, we did a foxtrot. Are you up for a waltz?
Karen or Mark, do you guys have a story that you could use that would relate to this particular dance? Like kind of the dance in action. And I know I'm just throwing this out there having not asked you earlier.
I have so many. I think the recent one, I'll share one that I just had recently, and this has been really big for me in being with my adult grown-up children. It's a very, because you used the word who used the word recalibrating? That's a recalibration of a relationship. And Cole, our son, called me a few weeks ago, so he had an opportunity he's going to be interviewed and in a very different field. And he said, Mom, I want to talk to you. I'd like to just run some ideas. I need to tell my boss now that I'm applying for another job. I said, great. So he got on the phone, and this was huge because he said, like, what do you think I should do? And I said, well, what were your thoughts about how you were going to do that? Like, tell me what you feel knowing your boss. You guys have been together a long time, and there is a real respect. And he just walked me through where he was going with all of it. And I said to him, so that's when I picked up, okay, he's got a lot of pieces to the puzzle. So I said, do you want a couple of things that I've learned having to do this myself? So there's the knowledge part. And I said, I'm just going to give you a couple of examples that might be relevant to you. So passing that along and then letting him chew on that. Well, that's oh, Mom, I like that. So letting him pull on the thread of that, and then, just bringing in the idea of, okay, a few other things. And now he needed my advice because he was getting a little bit scared. Right. And I said, well, let's talk about the worst case scenario. And then I said, do you want some advice? And you can use the language. I guess that's where I'm going with this, is I really feel like the conversation dance for me allows me to actually name the shoes. Like, I don't have to go in and I say, I have a couple of bit of advice I want to give you, and I can move over in there. So what was really neat about all of this is that I said, and then I said at the very end, so is there anything right now that you don't feel confident that you could go in tomorrow and talk to your boss about? He goes, no, Mom, and he started to name it all out, and he hadn't taken some of my advice. Can you believe that? No, just kidding. But again, then that would be a big thing, Ian, that I would say is you drop it in, but you don't own it. It's not yours to own. It's an offer. So I found the dancing shoes, because I just worked with that metaphor with you again, Ian, with the shoes. I actually practiced the shoes that we had designed in that conversation dance, and it worked really well for Cole. And his conversation went really, really well. His boss said, I don't want you to go, and I hope you don't do well on your interview, but I hope you do well for yourself. And it was the right thing for Cole to do.
So when you were talking, it felt like you were able to sprinkle in a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It didn't have to be an all out, I'm going to teach this boy a lesson, or I'm going to give him all the advice he's going to need from A to Z. It was like dropping in a piece here and a piece there to see what he grabs onto, what he latches onto. And I think the key to that is knowing that every person that we speak to, you use this a lot, they're the CEO of their life. They already have the answers inside. It's not like we have to give them the roadmap. It's, where do you want to take yourself? And trusting that they're going to be fine no matter what they do. They're going to figure it out. It's just sometimes nice to have worked out some of the details before you go into the map and take yourself somewhere.
Well, the other thing I've learned, which was a big unlearning for me, because I was very attached to this, there's more than one right way.
Oh. That's not true, Karen.
Right. And so that's been big for me in many aspects of my life, and still is. That's a muscle. It's a deeply rooted, I would say, protection for me. It's not even a healthy one. So yeah, there's more than one right way.
And also, I think there's maybe not even a right way. There's a right way for me, a right way for you. Like when I quit government, what feels like a zillion years ago, I had to leave without a safety net. It was the way I had to do it, or I knew I would crawl myself back inside the womb of the government. And that's not the strategy for everybody, and maybe nor should it be, right? Like maybe having your plan kind of worked out before you actually take the jump. But for me, I knew I couldn't. I knew that safety net was going to be a kind of a crutch that I would stay attached to it, and I wouldn't have been able to leave. So just knowing that people will have the right way for them, and even if they do stumble and fall, who's to say what that path or journey was supposed to be for them and their learning? So it just speaks into that not being attached to your piece of advice. Go ahead, Mark. This is all play.
Literally this morning, speaking to a colleague of mine in government, in a management position, this is the time of year where we do the performance assessments. That dreaded time. And I'm going to say dreaded for who, because you could feel it dreaded because you're getting assessed, or you can also feel dreaded because you're giving the assessment. And this was the case. So speaking to my colleague, and she said, I am dreading this part because I have to have a difficult conversation, one that I don't want to have. So long story short, it's a performance issue, and it's coming up in the performance assessment. So I said, well, what can you share, just without saying who it is? So we talked about it, talked about the situation. I said, well, what do you need? And she said, well, how would you do it? So clearly that in the dance, that was advice. How would you do it? Or mentoring if you want, maybe more mentoring. So we went there, we talked about it for a while, and it just occurring to me now that is more mentoring than it is advice. So talked about how I would do it and sharing stories about how I've done it in the past. And then a few ideas came to mind. So I said, you open to a few pieces of advice? And she said, yes. So I gave her 2 pieces, but there was clearly some hesitation. And I say clearly because she went like this and shook her head. So I had that visual cue. So which caused me to ask a question, okay, what's the hesitation? And she said, well, I'm not sure. And I said, not sure about what? So again, using the open-ended question. So I went back to the coaching mode, not sure about what. And finally she opened up and said, I feel uncomfortable giving it because it reminds me 2 things. It reminds me of when I had to receive that type of feedback in the past. I'm reliving that. So it was about her. Mm-hmm. And she went on about that a bit. And she said, I'm afraid that our relationship will then be affected. So it wasn't even about the fact that she knew that she had to do this and it was right or wrong. What are the repercussions? So we talked about that a bit. But see, just that conversation, just that piece went into 3 different dance styles, in the mentoring, the advice giving. And then when that didn't stick, because I may or may not have followed the relationship possibilities and action model, I went right into advice giving and mentoring because that's what she asked for. But there was resistance there, and I felt it, and we explored it, and it ended up pretty good. I don't know how it ended up because she didn't tell me. But as far as her feelings, and Karen says it quite a bit, wherever you go, you bring yourself along. She was bringing herself along in her way of being, projecting it in the future. It hasn't even happened yet. She was worried about it. So that little voice of fear, doubt, and worry about what was happening in her was affecting her moving forward. So that little voice that's ever present, sometimes it speaks loudly, and loudly. In her case, it was the shake of the head, the clear shake of no. Well, so yeah, following the person, which shoes are we putting? It just appeared, and I didn't even reflect. Oh, that was an interesting conversation, going from mentoring to coaching to or mentoring from advice giving to coaching. It just I was at a loss when you asked a question, but that one came to mind, and it's clearly it's ever present if we look for it in our conversations.
And if we trust that they have the answers inside of them and that they're the lead, then they're going to tell us. They're going to tell us. And for you, it was told in a body cue. A shake of the head was your indication that there's something else there.
So to to your point about the answer inside of her, I was looking for an answer to give her as far as an action, something she could use because she asked for it. But in fact, the answer she was looking for, probably she came up with it into it's how I am being with the situation. It's how I am anticipating it. So if she could let go of that, then that's the answer. There's no answer because there's no easy way to do this. Like Karen says, no right way or wrong way. There's more than one right way. In this case, there might be more than one wrong way. I don't know, but it's a difficult conversation. So her way of being, what was her actual issue, not the actual task at hand.
And I think that's probably the case for most situations. It's not necessarily the steps that need to take place. It's how am I getting in my own way of taking those steps? What are the worries or thoughts in my head that keep me from stepping into it? Karen, I think had this crisis, a little extreme, had this today. As she's trying to give me feedback on a video that I had done, which we weren't even looking at the same video. How's Ian going to take this if I share what I really feel about this video? He didn't take any of my notes from the first time we did it, blah, 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 whatever it was, right? And poor her. And then I show her the real video because I must have sent her the wrong link. And she didn't see the updated version. So she had all these notes for me, soften the blow, right? And then she's like, oh, this is good. We're good. We're done. We'll send Mark his version and he'll take care of it. Okay, good. Get in our own ways. We get in our own heads.
You know, I yes.
And
totally
I'm teasing you by calling it a crisis, by the way.
No.
Is that the video you just sent me a while ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I looked at it and I said, I got to translate this. Boy, Ian did such a good job. How am I going to match this? See how my voice was going?
Yeah.
I got to match this. So I got to simultaneously translate this and try to be as energetic or clear as Ian. Okay. And so I'm still not over that. That was a good video.
You got time to figure it out, Mark. It's not a big deal. It's not rocket science. It's
No,
3.5 minutes long.
Well,
see the conversation.
Yeah.
See look. Let's deconstruct this one.
You're dancing by yourself in your head.
We're
right now.
dancing, and we're going from advice giving, and I'm, but that low voice is speaking quite loudly. So how do we recognize that? That's part of the dance.
And how do you give it voice? It's so interesting. We call it the little voice in the head, but it's just, and I think that's so important. And I hope one of our coffee coaching and conversations and coaching happens that we talk about just like noticing that about ourselves and having to maybe do something that's outside of our comfort zone, giving feedback. How do we get ready for that? And how do we show up letting people know that's truly how we feel?
Mm-hmm.
And because everybody's having that little voice in their head. You just said it. We're all, and that's why your thoughts are like a bad neighborhood. Don't go there alone. And being able to deconstruct, you said the word, let's just deconstruct it. That's the coaching side in you, Mark, wanting to put that out there. And we'll hopefully talk about the whole thing around the little voice and how it's there to support you and how sometimes it holds you back and how to use that for good, as I call it. How do we use the little voice for good and not let it, take us down? And it's brought me down many times. And just like Ian said, even suggesting doing this, is my little voice in my head has been a long time saying, well, we're not ready yet.
Yeah, and I think there's always a voice in there, regardless of even how good you are at doing these things, right? It's practice, it's putting yourself out there, it's all those things, and there's always going to be, is it good enough? Is it worthwhile enough? Will people get something from it? And at some point, it doesn't matter, and we've got to let it go, because if we keep it in, we're being selfish because we're too scared to do it. So who cares if it's a little imperfect? We put it out there. And if one person listens to this and gets some benefit from it, it was worth it. Right? And the more we do it, the better we get, and the more people will benefit. And then it should snowball, right? Regardless if my voice is a little bit active right now. Literally. What are you saying? Stop it.
Little
Yeah.
voice. Sometimes it's a whole darn committee up there. Never mind a little voice. Sometimes it's a whole committee. I saw one the other day said,
so it's different.
I saw a meme the other day said, if you see me talking to myself, I'm having a staff meeting.
Yeah, so I love the metaphor of the conversation dance, that it gives us permission and to be messy, to, I would say, be able to leverage everything we bring to the table and not overuse one over the other. And being with that person, asking them what they need, checking in, how's this working for you? Like asking questions so you can hear the little voice, so that you can find out what's going on inside of that person and where are they now. You said something in the video that I loved, like meeting people where they are at, Ian, in the conversation dance. And that's just to make sure that you're not two steps ahead, or maybe you're behind. They're needing that advice right now, and you're still trying to, you checked out and you're still thinking, advice giving or coaching or whatever other pair of shoes are needed, but you haven't checked in on what do they need right now? Where are you at? There's a lot that you just said. Is there anything missing before we finish this call? Like just asking questions. They might be done. That's the other thing. They're just done. They got that little nugget, and like, you need to leave them be.
Yeah, I think there's a strong desire, because we're helper type people. We want people to be okay. We want them to be, set up, and we want to keep giving. And you're right. Sometimes that one thing, maybe it's just a question that you leave them with, is enough. It doesn't have to be step-by-step 1 to 10 plan. It's what's enough for them right now. And they'll probably tell you by shutting down or wanting to leave or nodding their heads. Maybe that's enough, right? Getting some visual cues as well to say, yeah, I'm good. I got what I needed. I'm going to take this and I'm going to walk away, and maybe it's just thinking about this particular question.
You say that, and I keep referring back to the metaphors, like, okay, yeah, you stepped on my toes now. We're good. Or I'm tired now. I'm gonna sit the next dance out. I'm good.
It can be tiring to be in that position, right? Where you haven't spent the time to explore these things, and someone else is bombarding you with a bunch of questions and advice, right? Sometimes you need to take some time apart after this and just be with it. Like you said earlier, how are you being in the situation? Well, now I just need to be with these new ideas.
Sit and shine your shoes.
I remember I was picking a job in public service to go back to, and had an opportunity, and I phoned a mentor. He was an ADM in Arcan, and I'd had a list of things I wanted. He goes, tell me what you want to talk about. So I had 5 points I wanted to talk to him about, whether I should take this job or not, and what I needed for it to be set up. And I read them to him, and he turned all of those points into 5 questions that I needed to answer. And then he said, don't answer them now, write them down, answer the questions, and then we'll set up another call, and if you need me. And I remember hanging up the phone going, maybe he was too busy for me. So I sat down and I answered all those questions my way. I never called him back. And I wrote him and I said, how did you know? He said, you were so organized in what you said you needed. All you needed to do was answer them yourself and go have the conversation with the guy you're going to work for, and then come back if you need. And you did. I didn't need anything. And I thought that was pretty brilliant, to turn my points into questions and make me go and answer them on my own, and then come back if you need me. So yeah, it doesn't always have to be a bunch of stuff. That was really an interesting experience for me. Smart mentor.
That's what's interesting about that. being in that particular case, being a mentor was asking 5 questions and sending you on your way. It wasn't leading you down a path.
Yeah,
So
it was.
that mentor knew what pair of shoes to use that day.
I have to call him sometime, and I never asked him like, "What is that a strategy you use with people?" Because it was pretty smart what he did, and it was a very good strategy to force us to go inside of ourselves, find what we want to do, and then draw on whatever that you don't know, which is why really the mentor's role can be very powerful. It's targeted mentoring. Okay, this is the part you need. This is what you know. Here's what how can I fill your cup on the areas that you're feeling? I don't feel like I've got enough here to be able to give my own solutions around. It's pretty cool. So yeah, the dance, it's really an interesting way to look at the way conversations flow, because I used to think they were static. And now I realize, my goodness, they're not static at all. You said, and you talked about Mark coming in, giving advice to start, because that's what that person needed. And I would say that's the second thing. When people start to practice coaching, they want to start with coaching all the time. And I think that's really dishonoring sometimes when someone says, I need some advice, because that often will quieten the voice in the head. And then you can open up coaching. So there's really no set order. And that's why I talked earlier before you got on, Mark, that if the heels of all those shoes had a coaching, with the word coaching underneath, that it could support every conversation, so that it could be the, kind of what pair of shoes do I need to go towards, versus seeing it as, standalone. I think it serves people well in like, is this pair of shoes, or is there another pair of shoes that's going to serve them where they are right now?
What's going on in my head is, do I have to change this godforsaken diagram one more time with coaching heels?
I know. Isn't that awful?
I kid. Any final thoughts on the conversation dance?
Take your time. Take your time in your conversations. My final thought is, and we've talked about this again and again and again, responding versus reacting in our conversations. So if somebody says something and I react, it's going to be way different than if I respond. And the difference is reaction is the first thing that comes up. But if I give it some time and I give it some context, then my response can be way more richer as far as contributing to the conversation, to that person, to both our journeys. So I've learned to slow down and not react as much. Am I good at it? Not yet. Am I practicing it? Yes. Am I seeing the benefits? Absolutely. So respond versus react, and that requires time. It requires a deep breath, and those are my parting words.
Cool. Thanks, Mark. Okay.
I couldn't make any additional responding remarks like Mark just did right now. I would say ditto, 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 ditto. How you show up affects the inside of others. That's been my big learning in the conversation dance. So it's about me and how I'm showing up with and for them.
And I think the breath that Mark just mentioned helps provide that space for somebody to be affected in that way. It's awesome. So that's our little deeper dive into the conversation dance. So stay tuned. I haven't done this before, so click that notification bell and give your thumbs up or whatever. And if you have ideas or topics that you want to hear us delve deeper in on, feel free to write them in the comments or send an email to myself or Karen or Mark, and we'll be sure to try to integrate them into the conversations that we're having. That's it for me.
Thanks. Always enjoy our chats.